Wrong one. Sorry. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 66 of Tactical Crouch. We're a competitive Overwatch podcast bringing you probably the best string of shows I think we've probably ever had. Amazing coaches and guests, and it just gets better. We keep adding on. You can only put so many cherries on top of a cake before it becomes a cherry tree.
Yeah, cherry tree.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think that's that's the medical term.
Yeah.
All right. Well, without further ado, of course, I'm joined by Volamel and Yiska. Got head coach for the LA Valiant. Sorry.
Whoa, don't say
I'm
that.
still in.
Team.
I know, right?
So let's not
So
talk
we don't
about
talk
that.
about them on this show. all of the they're dead to us basically now. We're all LA Valiant fans on this show. I don't know if you know that, but we are three of the hardcorest LA Valiant fans you will ever find. We don't say this on every show. But head coach for the LA Valiant, Packing. Hey man, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
How are your Dolphins doing this year, by the way?
All right, let's not talk about that. All right, we can move on to the next subject, and we're good. So
I'm a Vikings fan. I only get to talk about 2 years out of the decade, and then constantly just get disappointed. So
yeah, well, you're lucky Dalvin Cook didn't get seriously injured last week. So
I'm not ready. I'm still not ready to talk about it. I'm still feeling it. We really do have an awesome show this week. We've got a ton to talk about. We have a ton of questions for Packing. Thank you to everybody who submitted their questions and ideas for topics that they wanted us to send to Packing. Almost all of them were good questions. Had a couple of stupid ones, but for the most part, you guys were really good. So good job on that part. Before we get started, though, all the normal stuff. Just search for Tactical Crouch on the internet. You can follow us everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes. If you're searching for Tactical Crouch, we're there. And follow, subscribe, whatever. Let's go ahead, talk with Packing. And this couldn't be done without our patron producers, Battle Crab, Made, Pin, Lolshin, and Charlie L. Thanks to our patron producers. You guys are the best. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. And now it's time to talk to Packing. All right, Packing. We're coming out swinging here. Yiska wrote these notes. And so how Yiska writes notes is he just puts the hard questions right away.
I like it.
Did I?
Shouldn't be any other way.
I like this first one. I'll read it Yiska verbatim. Yiska Batum.
I like that.
The Valiant didn't quite make it to play-ins in 2019. We want to talk about your 2019 seasons first.
Sure, yeah.
Do you have any regrets about that 2019 season, where you finished up, the progress that you made overall?
Yeah, I think regrets, no. Disappointment, yes. Obviously, after stage one, when I took over, from going 0-7 to where we were, it was night and day as a team, and we saw a lot of the improvement we wanted. We did a lot of the things the right way. We rebuilt the culture. There were so many great things that came out of what we were doing. Now, at the end of the day, my goal is to win, right? Like I want to win the whole thing, and I actually legitimately thought we had a good chance. We made the playoffs to make a run, through the playoff bracket as well, because we were so hot going from stage 3 and into stage 4, and unfortunately those last 2 games, they didn't go our way, and we put all the effort into focusing on gladiators, and for a map, for a map and a half, it looked like it was going to be a blowout, and then we just kind of fell apart. So yeah, regrets, no, though. Disappointment, yeah. So, we're going to fix it this year, and we're going to go from there. So.
All right, Yiska, I asked it verbatim, so you can't be mad at me for sugarcoating it. Follow-ups get to happen now.
Okay, so how do you think you would have done if you got in? Because the meta, of course, significantly changed. Heroes being introduced and whatnot. Do you think that would have been a meta that you guys would have rolled the dice correctly on?
Yeah. Well, I think we would have had at least 2 really good mechanical players in their roles. I mean, I think Agilities is one of the best Doomfist players. He's great mechanically at the hero, and then we could see from World Cup like how great Indy is at Sigma and how talented he is on that role. So I think we would have been able to figure out what we were doing really quickly, and I think we would have had a good chance at being successful in that meta. But it's one of those things that's neither here nor there. We'll never know. And unfortunately, and that's just how it is, right? So I just got to keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just gonna kind of jump in and drop a little love, because this is the team, the 2019 Valiant. They were the first team to topple the Titans, and I wanted to I'm sure Packing's talked about this a number of times, but this is a big deal. I feel like it would be remiss not to talk about how that was for you. What was that like behind the scenes? What was that like in the dugout? Celebrating this very historic win. What was that like for you?
Unfortunately, I was in my box in the dugout, so
sure,
I wasn't physically present. But going into there, we at the start of the stage, we really had a lot of good stuff going on, and we knew what we were doing. We're seeing the progress that we wanted to. And I was talking to my coaches a couple days before, and I was just like, we're gonna win this game. Like there's no doubt in my mind, because that's right when at the time when we decided, we're like, okay, well, we're playing Vancouver, we're playing a couple other really good teams. We don't want to we're not going to be meta slaves. We're not going to say, hey, listen, we're just going to play goats, because we're going to lose if we do that. So we changed up our roster. We put Shax in. We started playing Sombra goats instead. And watching their film, it was like, okay, we should win this, and we should be able to do it, really well. So, we knew Oasis didn't really favor us as a map against them, but every other map we were like, yeah, we should have a really good chance to win. So, I was pretty confident going into that match that we were going to win. And I think the players were too. They really adapted the mindset of we know what we're doing on this, and all we have to do is execute, rather than going in there and saying, hey, listen, this team hasn't lost a game.
Right.
They didn't approach it like that. And yeah, I mean, I think it was really exciting for everybody. It was exciting for the fans too. So, especially from where we started that year to kind of have that climax about 3/4 of the way through the season was really good. And it also, gave them that motivation to really go, hey, listen, we know we need to do a couple things during the season to make the playoffs, and we had a really low percentage chance to do it. But if we can do this, then we should be able to do whatever we want, right? So, it worked out, and it was great time, great experience for the players, and I think it's a moment that a lot of people aren't going to forget, in their entire life. So
that was pretty crazy.
I certainly won't forget how I predicted exactly that to happen. And
hey, so to be fair,
he did.
Joe picked where the Valiant would finish up at the end of the season, and he was far closer than either of us, Yiska. So,
well, that was some tea leaves astrological nonsense. That wasn't day to day.
Yeah.
Where was the prediction? That's what I want to know. Where was everybody's predictions?
We had you up, I think, at top 5, top 7. I think Yiska and I, and then Joe puts you at 11.
Yeah, around there, I think.
And he took internet for it for at least the first. I'd say the first.
I couldn't have predicted the entrance into the league, like the start to 2019. But I felt like I pieced together for the most part not the rebuild, but how you guys did overall. I went into the season kind of expecting, moves that were made elsewhere were a little bit more powerful, a little stronger, picking up some of the rookies that were coming in. I was big on some of them, so it was nothing personal, strictly business.
I mean, well, and the thing was, at the end of the day, if you go back and you look at, stage 1, right?
Sure.
You look at all the games. How many Map 5 losses were there in stage 1, right?
Yeah.
So realistically, saying anywhere from 5 to 12 or whatever, it really could have been anywhere in there. I mean, if we won 2 more games, I think we're top 10.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things, especially in that first stage when you lose so many map 5s, and a lot of those map 5s were like 0.3 map 5s. I mean, sometimes when you get going and you get a little bit of that negative mojo going on, it's like, hey, you lose 2 of those in a row, and then it comes up to map 5 and people start sweating a little bit more, and it's like, oh man, it's map 5. Oh well, it's 0.3. Oh, we've seen this before. And
the Valiant were 3. You guys were 3 and 6 on map 5s last year, and it was the second most map 5s of any Overwatch League team behind Chengdu. So.
And I think I'm not 100% certain here, but I think 4 of those map 5s came in stage 1. There's a lot.
I know there was quite a few in stage 1.
That sounds
for sure.
right,
Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 sounds right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we ripped off that Band-Aid, huh?
No Band-Aids. It's no Band-Aids.
Fair enough.
It's all in the past. You grow from it, you learn from it, and you move on. That's what you do.
That's fair.
And it happens. Like we've definitely seen a lot of. I mean, the amount of dynamic, like the dynamics of a team during the season are actually really interesting to watch, because you weren't the only team who was going through a lot of changes strategically and just with staff and players. And it's really interesting how you see the results ultimately end up changing. You have metas to take account of, new players to take account of, coaches to take account of, map 5s, right? Like one more map. How does that change change everything? So I think it's really interesting. Part of me though is like, does that feel like for you knowing all those factors, does that feel good that the league is that volatile and that you have that high of peaks and valleys? Does that make sense?
I think variance is extremely important. And at the end of the day, if you looked at the teams that were extremely successful throughout the year, they were the ones who ended up making the end of the playoffs, right? So, I think the volatile nature of the regular season, that's any season that you have. I mean, if you look at the NFL, if you look at I think last year, whatever it was, the Texans started out like 0-6 or 0-5 or something like that, and then they were making a playoff push at the end of the year. There's always going to be those storylines, and that's always going to happen within teams, regardless of if it's traditional sports or esports or whatever. So I think it's good, and I think it makes things exciting, right? If you looked at where kind of like our numbers were for like the people using our skins and all that kind of stuff at the beginning of the year, it wasn't good. Nobody wanted to, like, we were losers. That's what it was. There's no other way to put it, right? When you're 0-7, like, you're a loser. And that's what it is. Nobody wants to support that. Nobody, whatever. Well, as the season goes on and we start turning right in the ship and, going from there, you look at the end of at the end of the year when they're posting that stuff, and Valiant was in the top 3 because people wanted to support. They want to be out there. And the same thing with, Shanghai Dragons in season 1, sure. Right? So, you look at those kind of turnarounds, and I think it's extremely important. It's really good for the storylines. It's really good for, it's really good for people's careers. It was great for my career, what happened last year. And, you really get to prove your worth, and, your players get to prove their worth too, because once you get people like McGravy, that he came in last year, granted he did not play, but he provided a very, very important part of leadership on our team, because we needed someone who was, had the right mind of the culture. He knew exactly what I wanted. Even though he wasn't playing, he was still supporting the team in the dugout during the games. He would say, he'd ask me and say, "Hey, could I talk on a microphone really quick?" And he'd go in and freaking, be like, "Let's fucking go, guys! Like, you guys could do this, whatever." Like, and it was really, really important, because we had to build that up from the bottom. And then if you do it the right way and you start building that foundation in the right place, you see someone like him, and they do that, and they provide such a very good support role from the bench. And then this year, I was able to go, okay, well, great. Like, I'm actually able to give you the opportunity to play. And, stuff like that. I mean, those kind of storylines and things like that. It's what this is all about. And it's really great. So I'm super excited for it. And I think it is really important.
I think that's a good segue to get to, I guess, the biggest news recently for your team. And when we're talking about leadership in your team, certainly one name has to be mentioned. Oldest guy. Also, honestly, probably the face of the brand for a bit with his Custa news.
Oh, definitely.
What do you think? You personally, because we've seen, for instance, Mike Schwartz on Twitter saying what he feels he's losing in Custa's retirement. What do you think? What do you need to fill in your team next year? Now that Custa's gone.
Yeah, a lot. He leaves really big shoes to fill. And I guess it all starts with how things went in stage 1 and when he wasn't playing and everything like that, and the leadership he still provided and the positive attitude and how he was doing things and how he went about the full gambit of it from stage 1 not playing to stage 2. I told him, hey, listen, no, like, we're gonna put you back in. This is what we're doing. I'm gonna work with you. And we did that. And I mean, he's not only a leader inside the team but also outside the team, right? He always is doing the right thing. He's never he's never trash talking people on social media or doing the wrong thing. The values that the organization has, the values that I have of being professional, being courteous, doing all the right stuff at the right time, and doing all the right stuff at the wrong times too when things are going bad.
Sure.
He had that, and that's something that not a lot of people have. When you talk about leadership skills and having kind of like a grit, right, and a determination and a quality of leadership that people want to follow, he's one of the guys who has it, and not a lot of people have that. So I think it's really sad to see him go, but that's probably the biggest gap that we're going to be missing is that. And that's one of the things that I hope we could work with McGravy to transition into, because I see a lot of those same qualities in him that that Scott had, and he's a great leader. People want to follow him. He's very self-critical and can accept feedback from himself or from staff and things like that. And outside the game, he's a great locker room culture guy. So that's kind of what my plan is for it, and I hope it works out. But yeah, Scott, I mean, it's hard to say how much Scott does or how much Scott did and how great of a person he was and how great of a friend we became through all of the trials and tribulations that he was going through, and that and that I was going through as a new head coach in stage 2. We worked a lot together. We did like weekly leadership meetings with me, him, and Fact Fiction, that we would sit down and we would talk about, hey, listen, this is what the coaching staff's vision is for the team. This is how we're going to do it. I want some input from you guys. What's going on with the team culture wise? Anything I need to know, stuff like that. And I mean, I'm going to miss that. That's one of the biggest things I'm going to miss is our weekly calls on Sunday nights. It's sad. So, but it's good for him. It's good for him. So
got a nice advocate on the desk this year for Overwatch League too now. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys know where my leaks will be going.
Yeah, thanks. Quick, one of you guys get hired by the Valiant. Thanks. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So what?
No,
but yeah, it's certainly an interesting part. That is also like a dynamic that it will be interesting to see, because I mean we will have definitely 2 former Overwatch League players on the broadcast, maybe 3. Yeah. I don't know, and to see how they react to their old teams and if there even maybe something develops. I don't think that will be the case in Custa's case. Maybe in other players' cases. Certainly interesting, like how much, especially like if you're a desk talent, there's a certain level of objectivity that is required of you, right? So
yeah, and I think a lot of those guys that are doing it, I think they're a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and they also understand that too. So, I personally, I don't think that's gonna be a problem. I know that's not gonna be a problem for Scott, but I hope he gives us a little bit of the, a little bit of nice treatment, a little shoulder nudges here and there, and at least I hope he's rooting for us. I'm sure he will be, but like I said, I'm gonna miss him, and it'll be nice to be able to see him out there too. So.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, he's gonna be great at it. It's
Oh yeah.
Don't you hate
Without a
people who
doubt.
are so talented that they just
They're good at everything they do.
I'm just good at things.
Yeah.
YouTube content, sure, I can do it. All right. Pro Overwatch League player, yeah, sure, no problem. Desk, sure, yeah, whatever.
A streamer, yep, gotcha. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, no, sure. Right. Sign here,
I'm kind of
please.
excited to see the transition start to begin for some of these, day one players. Both of these, Jake and Custa, both like they've been doing this for a long time. So we're starting to see that trickle up to desk talent, to coaching, to management, to this, that, the other thing. We're starting to filter some of the old heads up, and that's really cool to see. Like I on the short list of people who I would like to have seen, I think Custa, Jake, definitely on that list with them. They're very well spoken. They have great heads on them. Like been very good for the game optics wise. They always, like you said, they're not bad role models in a sense of, being humble, staying low on the braggadocious charts. So it's wouldn't have it any other way. And I think they're going to do a fantastic job.
I want to talk about the 2020 season changes with you really quick, Packing, because there's some pretty big changes. Obviously, you did have your own homestand last season, and so you got a little bit of taste of what season 3 had in store. But overall, the LA Valiant, you're kind of middle of the road as far as, from what we've been able to parse out on just kind of travel and stuff. I mean, how have the logistics been working out here? Like, are you guys all set? We've seen some teams that are like, we're not traveling with all of our players. Other teams are like, yes, we are. Other teams are like, we still don't know yet. So how's that all been going for you?
Yeah. We're trying to be really proactive, and that's what Mike, he handles all the logistics stuff, and I feel like we talk about it twice a day. Is, hey, listen, like, what are we doing with this? What are we doing with this? How do we do this? Anything from the visa stuff, just getting people to the States first, to Chinese visas, to everything in between. And I think it's I think a lot of people are starting to figure that stuff out now. We've been trying to be really proactive about it and be asking the right questions at the right times, but I think it's just going to be a learning process for everybody. Like I said, I hope, everything goes smoothly, but, I talked about it before the show, is when I was in the Marine Corps and you look at the logistics of that, going to Afghanistan or here or there or wherever, and we've been doing it for 10 years, and then there's logistic problems with that. You're silly to think everything's going to go smooth and you're not going to have logistic problems wherever you go. So I think one of the things we really adapted is just, the mentality of trying to be great at everything we're doing. So even if that's planning logistics and, making sure the players are going to be taken care of with what they need, or if it's, practice or anything like that. So, having that mentality, I think, is going to be really good for us, and making sure we're flexible and we understand that, it's not going to go the way we think they're going to go, or the way it's supposed to go. So, in terms of actual logistics, everything's just kind of in the process right now, especially with like the China trip so early in the season. But yeah, we're just trying to be flexible and trying to make sure we're doing things the right way. So, taking care of the players.
What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be? I think, and not just for the Valiant, but just kind of any team. You're going to be you start off in Dallas, then you kind of go on this stint in China, and you come back to the United States from there. Like, are you worried about practice quality? Is just travel overall, you think, going to be one of the most challenging factors?
Yeah, I think there's multiple different facets of what you need to look at, right? Obviously, like the logistics stuff, like tons of stuff could go wrong with that. Just initially with anything from player gear being gone and not arriving at the place, to delayed flights or just long flight times and things like that. So there's that aspect. So you have that, then you have like the physiological factors of the travel on people's bodies, and the psychological factors on people with. You could have the best team in the world, but if they don't travel well, then it's going to be a really difficult season for you. How well do players deal with jet lag? How well do players deal with eating uncomfortable foods that they're not familiar with? All these different kinds of things. And we were able to experience that a little bit last year, going to Dallas and then having our own. And then I was actually able to go to the Atlanta one because I was living in Georgia at the same time. So I was able to experience that one too. But when you see this kind of stuff, initially it's like it's kind of you're rolling the dice. You pick players that you think have the values that you do have, those the fortitude and the mental fortitude to actually travel, not be frustrated by it and things like that. And I think for right now, what we're talking about is making sure we're bringing everybody just in case stuff happens, people get sick, especially for like the longer trips. But when it comes to like going to Dallas and things like that, I think initially the plan we're discussing is trying to fly out just the night before, right? Practice where we're comfortable, and then fly out and just run it like we're playing at the in the NBA or something like that. Go do our business there, go home, and practice where we're comfortable and be able to give the players those kind of environments. So we'll see how it works. I think a lot of teams are going to struggle with it. I hope my team's not one of them, because I want us to be successful. But you never know. I mean, it just depends on the goal and the mental fortitude of the players. So
I will say, like, one thing that I was recently looking at is not just travel schedule, which is of course for one division way harder in most regards, right? Yep. And then I upon seeing that Boston is actually living in Boston, this is rough. Like, their schedule, it's actually insane how disadvantaged they are in comparison to Washington, because not only do they travel among the most, and actually I think they will be the team that travels the most because they stay home, they will also be the team that travels into the markets with the worst possible practice, is what I'm predicting anyway, with the worst possible teams to practice against. So, like, this I think will have tremendous impact on, like, if you're a lot in Europe, if you're traveling a lot with the teams in Europe, like, this is all going to be, and then also how they travel, like, they go to Europe, then they come back, then they go to Europe again. Like, stuff like that is, like, Boston, just for that, is at such a disadvantage.
Yeah, and I think that's, you look at that, and then I think if you look more at the East Division schedules, right, those teams I think they only come to the States once because of the way the visas work. So they play like half the season in China and Korea, and then they come and play in the States for half the year. To me, it seems like that's a pretty good advantage, right? Because they're going to be playing a lot of these the good Korean contenders teams and
sure.
things like that too, right? And a lot of those teams are extremely talented. When we were scrimming them the past couple of weeks, it's like, hey, like, these guys are pretty good. They know what they're doing. You look at what happened with the Vancouver Titans, right? They picked up a full team from contenders, and then they did really well from Korean contenders. So, there's when it comes to like the practice advantages and things like that, I think there's definitely stuff like that. Like you said, Boston travels so much. The trip to Europe it's not a bad flight. It's not traveling to China. It's not 20 hours, but just traveling an 8-hour flight every 2-3 weeks, does that suck? Absolutely it does. Is that going to affect you? 100%. I remember when I came back from World Cup in Paris for EU contenders finals, I came back and I was like, man, I was going to sleep for like 2 days. Like, that's I just need to readjust my schedule and everything. And I'm someone who I wake up early. I spend the whole day with my family and then practice and stuff.
Contenders, by the way. That's how I feel after Korean. I'm watching, man. I'm over Cup. I'm sleeping 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's one of those things. I mean, the logistics of everything. It's just gonna be interesting because it's not. Even if you look at the NFL or the NBA or anything, MLB, they travel all the time. They play so many games. They don't go out of the country. They're not playing. They're not playing in China for a month and then coming back, or they're not going to Europe for 2 weeks and then coming back and then going, oh, hey, you get 1 week off and you're playing more games. So, it'll be interesting. I think it's exciting. It's at least all these guys who are actually playing are they're really young, relatively speaking. So they should have more energy than I do when we're traveling. So
Well, something that was kind of interesting that Deepe brought up last week was that he felt that we might see different meta interpretations between the different divisions as like they travel to different parts of the world. Do you think that we might see that in Overwatch League, or do you think that it'll largely stay the same?
My initial opinion or initial, I guess, gut reaction is that it's going to be generally the same, right? Regardless of the region you're in, the heroes that are strong, their strategy that's strong is typically what happens, right? If you go and you look at, what the Korean contenders teams are practicing versus NA contenders versus Overwatch League and the teams they're playing now, it's the same stuff right now. So that leads me to believe that, if these teams that are in Asia are going to be playing against those teams, and they're going to try to run the best strategy, and then you have the teams in NA who are playing against each other, which is going to be a majority of, Overwatch League teams. They're going to be playing the same thing. So, I don't think the variance is going to be super high. Maybe some like niche picks here and there, but at least from my gut reaction of actually practicing and stuff now, no, it's not going to be different. The strong heroes, strong comps are going to be the strong heroes and strong comps. Doesn't matter where you go. So,
yeah, I think the defense of that point is that because of travel, I personally predict that contenders will catch up a lot to the level of Overwatch League simply because of that. Like one guy is on a plane looking at VODs on his iPad. Yeah. The other kid is like gaming for 16 hours a day with mom's sandwiches. Like, who's going to improve faster?
Mom's sandwiches sound good.
I was gonna say that sounds so good right now. Yeah. Sign me up for that one.
Yeah.
So it's like, at least if it's sort of influenced by the regional contenders scenes, sometimes we saw different meta interpretations in the different scenes.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, like, sure. I mean, what it was
because of Europe, right? Like the goats thing true. And the right. Like,
yeah, but for that counterpoint to that too, right? Is goats started in NA, right? Like, yes, Europe was a very quad tank heavy region. When I started coaching Angry Titans, they were the goats was the meta, and they wanted to play quad tank because that's what they were comfortable playing. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna learn how to do this, right? So I think eventually comes the point that everybody catches up, and that's right. And like I think the point of the travel and all that stuff is it's good, but when like if you do things the right way, at least from my perspective of, you're not going to go to Dallas 3 days or 4 days before the event unless you have to, and you're going to stay at your home place. You're going to practice. You're going to be able to practice as much as possible, and then the night before, 2 days before, if you have media or content or whatever, you're going to go out there and then use their facilities for those days. And when you talk about the sheer time loss, I mean, you're only going to lose a lot of these places you're traveling to. You're not going to lose a lot of time, especially for us traveling like West Coast, stuff like that, 1.5 to 2 hour flights, something like that. Like, we still have room in the day to practice, right? So, and even if it's when it actually comes to playing the game, in my opinion, playing the game's not the most important thing to do, especially once the season's going. The more important stuff is doing those reviews, doing the player one-on-ones, helping them learn, helping them develop better. That's more important than actually sitting down and going, hey, we're going to scrim for 6 hours today. So
will you have some sort of, let's say, movable equipment so that, like, because here's my question. Okay, let's talk a little bit candidly. Some of those homestands didn't have amazing practice facilities, right? Mm-hmm. I assume this has to be a fear of teams that practice at these homestands. So maybe some teams would just go, okay, we're investing in like amazing laptops or whatever, and then we definitely make out a way to get solid internet going or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Is that I think thing you're thinking about?
We've been thinking about that stuff for a long time already, and that's kind of why I said, with the logistics stuff, it's you expect it to be run and you expect it to work out well, but it never does. So you always need a backup plan. You need an idea for what you're going to do. Even a platform to like if we go to China for a month, how are our guys going to play the game outside of practice? Because you get X amount of practice hours. But then when you're done with that, like what do we have to do to let them play ranked and let them work on their micro plays or just their mechanics or this or that? So we've been thinking about it, and I think there's a lot of different options for what people need to do to be successful. Now I'm not going to share any of those or what we're talking about doing because, I don't want other teams to go, oh, hey, that's a good idea, we're going to do that. Sure. But yeah, I think it's really important, and being able to handle handle that stuff and understand, hey, it's not going to work out the way you think it is. Like, just because Blizzard says everybody's going to have practice areas available doesn't mean that they're readily going to be available or they're going to be good. So, you know, we'll just see what happens. And like I said, this year I think is a big learning experience for everybody. So, you know, hope for the best, expect the worst, and you know, just do whatever you can to make sure that on our side of things, we're giving the players the best chance to succeed in practice and stuff like that. So, definitely thinking about that stuff though.
Kind of going back to the travel question and how, you know, the meta may or may not change, in a more general sense, are you kind of excited to maybe see some players you might not have been able to see in, you know, the open tryouts? Is this something that, you know, maybe the league as a whole is you know, excited for? Are you excited to kind of trial against some of each region's best teams, maybe see some new players that, like you said, or like I said, you might not have been able to trial in your open process?
Yeah, when it comes to that, like we have like a very, you know, very extensive process for how and where we're looking at players. So, you know, the past couple of years, I try to make it a habit of watching all the games from all the contenders regions. This year it was a little bit harder to do with, you know, what we were doing during the season, but I think it's great. It's great being able to play different teams for different regions because you get a different perspective, right? Because the way I think about the game, or you guys think about the game, or any of my players think about the game, is different than someone from Korea or China or wherever, Europe. So it's really good. And that's one of the things that, you know, I've attributed my success to, was being able to go to Europe and not only coach those guys, but learn from those guys and go, okay, well, I would look at the game in this way, and this is what I see. Well, will that work against this or not? Okay, a lot of the times the answer is no, because traditionally speaking, the mentality and the approach of how I'm thinking about the game is geared towards the past 2 years of me coaching against people who are thinking in a very similar way or similar fashion. So I think it's really good. And I think if you go in open-minded about it, there's a lot of stuff you can learn from those teams, regardless of if they're like good teams or bad teams, or good players or bad players. The way they think about the game is different, and the way we think about the game is different. So, you know, having that kind of mindset is extremely important there. Scouting talent, I mean, you might find a gem and go, hey, this guy's insane. You know, chuck him down. Like, we'll take a look and get some VODs. But, you know, the scouting process we have, it's, you know, it was pretty invasive, and I'm pretty happy with how ours went. So, you know, I think it's more so about the symbiotic relationship of being able to use those scrims to learn more. You know, if it's myself as a coach or the players as, you know, as individuals as well. So,
yeah, like that's interesting. Like, because we already beforehand had a talk about this. Like, you had an insane size of a trial, right? How many players did sign up?
A lot. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it was a lot. I want to say it was close to 1,000, if not more. I don't know. It was a lot though. It was a lot of players. And
there were players where you had specifically your eye on. Did you land any of those players? And would you? I don't want to make you buff their ego more than, you know, like, than they maybe yet deserve, by saying like, okay, this is. But who were the players that came from the old open trials?
Yeah, well, you know, just from strictly the we did an open trial and then a closed trial after that. So basically, if you made it through the open trial, then you would you'd get to the closed trial. So we ended up having a Dreamer. He was one that came from there. A Slur came from there, and then I think they were the two that came from the and then Apply played in those as well.
Okay.
And then Apply was invited to the closed tryout, but he asked to play in the open tryout. And kind of when the open tryout was ending, we were like, oh, hey, this guy's really good. If he does really well in closed tryouts, then you know, kind of same thing. But yeah, I mean, out of the people who really surprised me just from the open tryouts, I mean, Dreamer's got to be the one that I said I never heard of him before, never knew who he was. anything like that. And I started doing research after I watched him play one time. I'm like, hey, this guy looks like he's got some pretty good mechanics. Let me take a look. So, scheduled him some more and checked him out. And then I was like, okay, he's pretty good. Let's look at, a little bit of history and start, talking to some people and find out a little bit about him personally. And then his journey himself was crazy with how he was, he's Korean, he went to Thailand and he was playing in Australia and all this stuff. He was, he's really passionate and really wanted to be successful. And his story and, what I think he will be able to bring to the team, I mean, is really good. So, yeah, I mean, I think he was probably the one out of the open tryouts that I don't want to say it surprised me the most, but I've definitely never heard of his name before.
No.
But when it comes down to it, the most important thing, and I talked to my coaching staff about this, was when we go into the trial process, we need to throw out all the preconceptions we have about any players out the door, and we need to be as objective as possible, because if we want to be a good team, we cannot let any bias influence our decisions, regardless of if that's a past bias from, we think this player is really good or that player played for us before, or whatever the case may be. They have to do it, and they have to do it the right way, and they have to impress us, and it has to line up with the mentality and the ideology and the vision that I have. And we found a lot of those guys. I mean, McGravy is a perfect example. Like I said, last year he did all that stuff for us. He wasn't gifted the spot. I actually had a conversation with him at the end of the year saying, hey, we're not picking up your option. And then I messaged him a couple weeks later and said, if you want to come to the closed tryout, I'd be more than happy to have you at the closed tryout. Be it known, you're not going to be gifted a spot, and you got to play well. And I know you haven't scrimmed for the past year, but if you want to be successful, here's your notice, practice and go get it. And he came into the tryouts like a freaking bat out of hell. And everybody was like, oh, okay, well, all right. Well, everybody else has been playing Sigma for the past year or 6 months or whatever it was, 3, 4, or 5 months. And you haven't touched it once in a scrim. And, you're doing a good job, and yeah, there's learning points that you need to have, but you're doing an outstanding job for not knowing what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. So yeah, being as objective as possible, and then finding people that fit the vision. Those are the two main goals. And we didn't care what region the players were from, who the players were, if we had experience with them, if we didn't. If they met those two things, and then they were morally good people, and we think would be able to benefit the team, then that's who we look to pick up. So
like that's interesting to me, because for instance, like I mean, Joe uses this in a felt way every second article, but the Koreans talk about a concept of team color. And yeah, you do, right? Like, I
don't know.
Like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I do that. No, but just like maybe more from a, perhaps, if you want, philosophical understanding, like what kind of players, what were you looking for in players? What, like from the outside, we see, okay, you went with 3 known entities, and they're all young, pretty much, right? I think, who's the oldest one? Was McGravy the oldest one with 22? I'm pretty sure he is, yeah.
Oh no, we got some. I think 20 or 22, 23, something like that. So
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
Is like what was your what were the other
vision,
things to
I guess the question.
So,
yeah. So like I said, we wanted to find people like, obviously they had to be mechanically good, right? That's a prerequisite. Okay. But when it came down to what I look for in players and team culture, right, is I look for an environment where if we have these players that, number one, they're super self-aware of themselves, and if they need, and super self-critical, right? So not to the point that they're going to beat the hell out of themselves if they do something wrong, but at the point that I can trust these players to, if I say, hey, listen, we have homework today, we're going to do this, that every single one of them is going to do it, show up with their ideas, and is going to be an active part of solving the problems that we have, right? So that was number one. Number two is I look for people who are passionate, and the thing that's funny is it's easy to say people are passionate about the game because everybody wants to be a pro, right? But there's a different level of passion, and there's just like anything else in the world, and the people, especially when you're making a brand new team and in a league like the Overwatch League, you need people who are willing to put in 4, 5, 6 extra hours a day to get better, because we don't have any of those pre-existing synergies. So we needed people that were that had that, right. We needed people who we thought would work well and develop well underneath the coaching staff as well. I mean, you guys know, a lot of people know, I could be a little bit of a hard ass sometimes, but it's I needed to find people who wouldn't shut down or shut me out or any of my other coaches out if we were giving them negative feedback or positive feedback or whatever, because we do a lot of player development stuff. We sit down with the players, we talk to them every single day. Some of these guys 4, 5, 6 times a week, they get one-on-one sessions. And sometimes they're, hey, listen, you're doing this better. We just need to do this, this, and this. Other times it's like, what are we doing here? This is like, we're regressing. We need to do this. This is bad. So we needed to find people who also had a little bit of a thick skin. And then from there, it was building, the culture of who we thought would work well together. There were so many players out there, so many good players too. But when it comes down to it, you say, okay, at the end of the day, we really want to build a team around, these 2 or 3 pieces. What do we need to support them? And what other mentalities? What are we looking for in the culture of, who's going to be the leadership? Who's going to be our Custa? Who's sure. Who's going to take care of this in the communication system, or who's going to do this or this? Do we really need this role to talk because this guy's we think this guy's really good mechanically, but he has some other detriments to him, stuff like that. We had to go through every possible situation and sit down and go, okay, cool. This is the team we think will work the best together, and can grow and develop at an exponential rate, because that's what we need. And, I think we got a lot of good guys, and like I said, I'm super excited about who we got. There's some more that you guys don't know about, but that's fine, and it'll stay that way. True. But
all right, no follow up.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that we if we get, I'm a firm believer of, especially in this game, if we get the culture and the structure in the place it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And then I enable my coaches to enable the players to be successful, then we're always going to be successful. It doesn't matter what roster you have out there. That's what we can do. And that's what I did last year. And we were able to right the ship. And then this year, we'll do the same thing. And, we'll make sure the team's at the place it needs to be when day one for the season starts. And if it's not where we want it to be, well, the things I can guarantee are that we're going to work harder than any other team in the league, and that my players are going to hold themselves accountable for if they're not playing well, or if they need to do something, they're going to work to get better, because every single one of them on the roster understands, the level of accountability that I expect from them, and I hold on myself, and that they should do the same. So, yeah, I hope that kind of answered what you were talking about, Yiska. So,
absolutely, yeah. So I think that's a good point to just continue talking about the specific players, because some of those are very interesting, and especially I don't think many viewers that
some of them are a little obscure for the general audience, but have definitely made a name for themselves, pre Overwatch League, and they're quite solid, I would say.
Yeah. Interestingly, one of the coach favorites, sometimes you watch a game, or let's be honest, with so much OWL on, there's a limited amount of drive. I also have been watching contender seasons, especially outside the playoffs, and there was one guy that slipped under my radar, but the interesting thing is then to hear the coach feedback around contenders, around Overwatch League teams. And the guy that stood out, and where people even said that, man, during a time of the season, he was the best flex support in NA, was Lastro.
Yeah.
And apparently absolute nutter,
he's great.
Alarm-esque, if you want, during that time better than Alarm, according to these coaches. Mm-hmm. What was the trial process for him like, and what do you think? Is that one of your hidden aces up your sleeve?
I don't think he's a hidden ace. I think I think he's just outstanding. He's a great player, but tryout process for him was the same as everybody else. He went through the same thing. Like I said, nobody got any free breaks. Nobody didn't get to skip things because we thought they were good or we had an eye on them. And we said, hey, we're going to do this. We want you to do the closed tryout. Do you want to attend? He said, yeah, absolutely. Came in and like, hey, this kid's as good as we think he is. Like, we should try to get him soon because we don't want anybody else find this out. We don't want him getting trials other places.
Yeah.
And fortunately we were able to move quick on it and make it work. And credit to Mike on that. He does such a great job with taking care of the actual player signings for who we think are going to fit and getting them done quick and working with the lawyers and all that stuff. So it's great. But speaking on Lastro, I mean, people are going to be surprised. If people don't know who he is, they're going to find out really quick because he's great. I mean, he's every hero he plays at such a high level. He's so talented. He actually can communicate pretty well in an English communication system too, which is great. And he's really receptive to feedback, and he takes the feedback and implements it immediately. So, when we're looking for players that kind of hit every aspect, like every nail on the head, boom, 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 right down the line, and we're like, yeah, this guy, he's talented, and he's definitely going to, I think at least, he's definitely going to be a good piece for us to utilize this year. So I'm super excited.
I mean, does potential rookie of the year Lastro strike you as fancy? Does it kind of prick your ears up, Packing?
I mean, I think the world's his oyster, man. He could, if like he honestly, like I swear, he is absolutely outstanding. He reminds me in a lot of ways of Kriv. Even a little bit to the goofiness sometimes of in practice and things like that, and letting them move. He reminds me a lot of Kriv. And that's a good thing because Kriv was one of my favorite players I ever coached in my life. So, so yeah, I think he's got a good start for himself.
KSF and Lastro the next Romans. So that's going to happen.
Pair him up.
What was that?
Ship them.
Like Lastro and KSF the next Romans, like Garif and Agility.
I don't know, man. Tune in to find out on the Valiant content at the Los Angeles Valiant YouTube.
Get
another news.
So.
Lastro news.
Yeah, Lastro news network. Yeah.
Now, as you said, like we can expect. I think we have the minimum at the moment, right? There were league regulations. At some point, you gotta have 8 players. Those gotta be locked up, so you gotta start getting the visas and everything. But as you said, there's going to be more players. Can you at all disclose anything of the amount, where they are from?
So we have our roster is now finalized. We have 9 players. So at least for now, that's what we want. That's the number we want. We think it fits well. We have the right amount of people that we could give the right amount of resources to. So we have 9 players. Like I said, can't really talk about
Sure.
Who, but we did, yeah.
I like that.
So
yeah.
Like I'm already a little bit scared to ask because we had an interview in the last stretch of the season last year, and of course with your manager. And back then I asked you,
Sure.
Okay, so where do you think you will land? And
okay, we're going this route. Okay, I got you.
Once again, I ask you with what do you think? What's your season goal basically?
Yeah. So my personal goal obviously is to win every game we play. And that never changes, no matter what. That's always gonna be my goal, because if it wasn't, I shouldn't be doing this job. But that being said, realistically this year, I know we're gonna have some bumps and bruises along the way. We got a new team, a lot of new players, and I think the most important aspect to look at is just the level of synergy that we have now, and that needs to be built up, because there's so many players from different walks of life that are playing here. There's no core roster that we're building around really, because we signed how many new players. So, when it comes to expectations, our expectations are to develop these players, so that way, we can be successful long term for the future. And that's what, when I was talking to Mike and talking to the upper management, that's really what our focus is on, is getting these players, developing them, and being successful long term. So this year, if we're not as successful as I would like us to be, that's okay. But in the same respect, I'm trying to win every darn game we're playing. So it's one of those things that putting a number on it, I can't really quantify it, but I'm going to win as many as I can. The maximum number of games that I can win will be the number of games that I'll try to win. So we'll go with that for now. And you could talk to me again in mid-season, and we could come up with something more concrete. Okay.
Makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get at least this many wins. I can see the conversation already. Yeah, mid-season, at least.
Reddit.
Yeah. At least this many.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Okay. So here's the thing. Like, we heard, for instance, that next year is going to have more frequent patches. Sort of like the cadence of or the time between patches will decrease. I think a lot of people sort of expect a patch to come out before the league start. Now, how severe that might be, whatever. I guess two-part question. Is there still value in practicing a meta that you're eventually not going to play? And what kind of lessons can you take away from that? And then, what kind of goals are you currently pursuing in scrims?
Yeah, well, that's a 3-part question, but I'll let it slide.
True.
So.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's that German math. They do it differently.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
So personally, I think any teams that aren't practicing now are wasting time. And that's just my personal opinion, because once the season starts, practice schedule's so limited, right? We talked about that before, but there's so much you can learn, especially when you're bringing in new players. There's so much you can learn, just if it's not at a macro level of something you're going to play, about how people interact with each other, how they learn, how you can influence their decisions positively. So to me, practicing early is extremely important. It's something we didn't do last year, that I think we needed to, and I think it was one of the reasons why we weren't successful. We had to send everybody back to where they were from because of the visa issues last year, and we didn't practice. It was like, hey, listen, we just gotta wait for the visas. We'll wait until everybody gets back, and then we did that, and then we're 10 steps behind everybody else. So, even if it's not the meta we're gonna play, I think there's so much you could learn between, interpersonal relationships and communication, and how people think about things and how they see the game, and how you can influence their decisions and help them learn and enable them and all those kind of things. So yeah, I think, playing early is extremely important. And then I forget what the last part of your question was, but
it's because there's a
what are you currently
three-parter.
focusing on?
I don't know. So what are we currently focusing on? Yeah. So, what we're focusing on is, we're playing, the current meta, right? We're talking about, how we should be talking to each other, right? In game, out of game, feedback stuff. If there's problems, how do we arise at them? Critical thinking. If things aren't working, how do we go about this process? Last year, a lot of people heard me talking all about the steps. This is the steps, follow the steps. So they're kind of the introductory level of that stuff, and going, hey, listen, this is what we need to do. And at a fundamental level, if we do this on whatever composition we're on, we will always be successful, because we're always going to have that base. We're going to fall back on it, and that's what's going to happen. So we're working a lot on the fundamentals and the key aspects of the game, rather than going, okay, cool, on this comp, like, we really need to break down this one clip really, really in depth. It's more so large scale macro, and then, working with people together, building those relationships with coaches and players and player to player, and making it feel like a team. right now, at least for us, because like I said, when you have whatever it is, 6 players who were never played with each other before, you know, you got to start building those relationships somewhere, and especially when you lose a lot of those key culture guys like a Kariv and a Custa and Space and guys like that, then you need to build it back up, and that's kind of every team. I think there's so many signings this year. It's like, if you're not playing right now, I really do think you're going to be behind the 8 ball, because you're going to be learning all that stuff. Oh, and you're going to be traveling. So now your practice time might be cut. Now this might be cut, whatever. So it makes it hard. And, the earlier you do it, the better. And then you go from there. So.
Yeah, like that's the thing that's quite interesting to me. And it makes perfect sense. Like this offseason, of course, it was not just like a lot of player trades and whatnot, even though like players also tell me that like, wow, they're doing it completely differently. We never did this, but they don't have that. Same for the coaches. I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect to, for instance, take over a team that even like someone, I don't know, what, like Krusty's probably the most successful coach considered, like walk into a team that Krusty coached for a season and just say, oh, you're not doing that? Like, that's not part of your comms? You're like, this is not implemented? You don't have these mental images or, like models of how fights play out and whatnot. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to just like use this time, because you're not essentially learning the meta. You're learning interpersonal skills or how to synergize with your teammates, right? Especially valuable for people that haven't played in multinational rosters. Like some teams have that. But quite a lot of Koreans are now coming out that were on exclusive teams. I'm thinking Meko, I'm thinking Birdring, right? They got to figure out what it's like to have NA comms, right? Like A, B, 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 B. Like basically like just a very different calling structure. And then generally to see that, it's always very interesting how different languages used, also just like map callouts or whatever. Like they can be wildly different in teams, right? Have you ever broken
that's
down?
something we actually did in the past couple of weeks was we're giving out like call out sheets and stuff like that. Like, hey, listen, we don't know when we're going to play all the maps, but we're going to play them eventually, right? So here's 3 maps, learn these, right? Learn these call outs, everybody be on the same page. And it's, that kind of stuff is extremely important, extremely overlooked. And once again, last year, that's something like we were missing because we weren't able to do it during the midseason. When is there a great time to go to your players? Oh, hey, I know you have to focus on playing the games. I know you have your stream time. I know you got this and this and everything else. But on top of that, here is the map pool and learn all these call outs.
So on average, just total curiosity, like per map, how many call out? Can you tell us how detailed those call out spaces get? Like
we
50 or like 10?
Yeah. So we try to use broad categorization. So like we don't want there to be too much, right? It should be a general area of the map that they're looking at if you say something. So less is more in a sense. I've done it before in the past where it was very in detail with like, hey, this is this, this is this. But at the end of the day, as long as they're not just going, hey, this guy's on the right, this guy's on the left, whatever. Then we're in a good place. Short call outs and then modifiers, top, bottom, left, right, the left bank, top bank, whatever. That's really what you need because there's no room for the other stuff. So yeah.
Reminds me of my Halo days coming out with those call outs.
Yeah,
you're finding the right balance of like how detailed can you get before you're like sword room at the top with this. Yeah. Get it.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. Because like all that stuff is just that general information calling that like we just want to cut down on, right? Everything we want is short, concise, to the point, and has purpose. No, I don't want to say no information calls because you need information, but only important information calls and then command calls, right? Like we're doing this, I want to, stuff like that. So really, really important.
That's one thing that I picked up from Arrow analyzing a VOD, and basically like the way he broke it down almost so not only on a language point of view, even though that language then also dictates how people people think in their position, like pre-fight, mid-fight, cleanup, and then again pre-fight or post-fight, right?
Sure.
Like basically, like, and those things determine for your team, am I still in need of investing ultimates? Like, do I need to, is someone there that just says, oh, let me clean them up, then I'll have ult for next or whatever. Like these things, it's very interesting to see, and it's also very interesting to see how different these things are at the different levels of play. Like this is so often like these language differences. That is actually a thing that I've seen that is lacking in some contenders teams, at least, where it's more really like it feels very pick-uppy in a sense. Of course, needs to be, because often these contenders teams are being shaken up every other week, where they get a player bought out, and then what are you going to do? Like, you can't get that level of granularity then, right?
Well, I think the thing is, you could. It's just more work, right? Like, because if you have, say, you have 6 players, not 5 of them are going to get picked up at the same time, right? So if one person's getting picked up, but then you have a proper onboarding process and you have the structure to put it in there, it's like, hey, listen, by the way, this is what we do. This is how we do it. You know, here's what you need to know, and here's how here's the way we're going to teach you how to speak and do all this stuff. Like, you're teaching one person, and the team is going to help in that process too, rather than be like, oh, hey, we lost one guy, got to draw it back up. You know, you'd be more plug and place, because once you get a structured and efficient system going, I mean, you could pull someone out, put someone back in, and go, okay, like this guy, like, well, a couple days, and that guy should know what to do, because everybody else is doing it, right? And they're all leading by example. And if you're one cog in the whole piece, then it's really easy when they're not doing it, or when they are doing it, to give them, you know, positive, you know, reinforcement, negative reinforcement, things like that. So
yeah, there's like I recently, or it's a while ago, but there's a paper that is basically like on the behavior of chimpanzees, and they're trying to find the best factor that determines this chimpanzee's character. Almost, is it aggressive, defensive? And the best predictor of actually any ape-like monkey is, what are his 5 closest companions like. So if they're all aggressive, this 5th person or fifth monkey is also going to be aggressive. It's very easy to see, like we tell our children, like, don't surround yourself with bad influence.
Bad people, exactly, right? And that's the same thing when, like we talked about before, you know, when it comes to roster building, right? If you're surrounding these people with, you know, morally good people who, you know, who fit the bill on the categories you're looking for, it's going to be a team. There's not going to be culture problems. Like, you're going to be successful, because that's, if you surround yourself with successful people, you're going to be a successful person, you know. And that's you look at anything from sports to business to everything else in life, just being a good person. The people that surround themselves with good people are the people who are good people. The people who surround themselves with bad people are people who bad stuff happens to, or you know, things like that. And you know, I think it's really important, really important. But you are bringing me back to my primatology days when I was going to Penn State. I've loved my primatology class, and I was doing a big thing on anthropology and stuff when I was there, and man, it's freaking great. Love that stuff. So
you've recently gotten back to universities, right? Like,
well, so I graduated. So the funny thing about last year was in May, I graduated from you know, the university I was going to, and I still take some classes now just to keep my challenging myself. But last year, when I took over as like the interim head coach, right? I was the interim head coach, trying to figure out the whole mess of what was going on. Traveling back and forth from California to Georgia. I just had my son. He was 6 months old. You know, trying to learn how to be a dad and be there for him. You know, I was going to school, taking 18 credits at university the whole time, and I was flying 4 days a week, and I was doing all that at the same time from January until May when I graduated, and then it went down a little bit. But like the thing is about that stuff, it's like when you talk about like passion to want to do things and being successful and stuff like that, and surrounding yourself with successful people, you know, if you do that stuff and you practice good habits in your life, then like I really do believe that you'll always be successful, no matter how hard you have to work. If you want it, you'll get it. Just like be around successful people, be around supportive people, you know, and you'll be good. And yeah, I mean, really important. So
yeah, like wait, I had a point. Oh yeah, like I guess you're sort of practiced for the eventual sleep deprivation because of being a father. Like that's one thing that people really underestimate, especially like the esports audience crowd, like young. There's a study that I read that having a child, like a toddler, for the first, I think, 12 months, because they don't sleep through and you have to worry so much and everything, it is emotionally worse than even losing your significant other. Like it's just,
I don't know.
It's just so like emotionally taxing, and
it is,
especially the sleep deprivation is awful, right?
It's tough, man. I remember when I was first, I was like, I could do this. Like, I want to graduate this semester. I'm going to do this. Force myself to. And I started doing it, and I would wake up. My wife, she was a teacher. Now she's, you know, thankfully, she's able to stay at home and be a mom, which is great. But, you know, when it comes down to what my day-to-day routine was at that time, I'd wake up 6:30 in the morning, and I'd go fly at 7. I'd fly from 7 to 11. I would go to class. You know, I had some online class, and I would go to class, you know, 11 to 12, 12 to 1, go check on my son at the babysitter, come right back, go to practice, you know, do, you know, some VOD reviews, this, that, whatever before, and then go and do a full day of practice. And then after practice was done, I needed to spend time with my family because I didn't see them all day. And then spend time with them, go to bed, and do the same thing over the next day. It's like when you get done with practice, because I was on the East Coast, we get done with practice at, you know, typically like 11, but then we do a review. So scrims get done at 11, then we do a review, and then I have my coaches meeting, and then we build our review for the next day, and then this and that and everything else. You're not getting out of there until 2:00 in the morning, and then it's like you just want to sit down and hold the baby, and it's like, oh hey, by the way, yeah, you know, you're sitting down holding them for an hour, and it's like 3 a.m. and you're like, oh, by the way, I got to wake up at 7 and do the same thing all over the next day. But if you want it, you get it. And that's what you do, right? Is if you're passionate about something and you care enough, then you're always going to make it work. So
I kind of wanted to ask you about that. You know, it sounds like maybe barring school, because I guess it depends on exactly what your major was and how interested you were.
Aviation science and concentration of flight. Yeah.
So something, would you say that you were, you know, passionate about something at least that kind of engaged you, that you could actively learn into it, but wasn't
School
like
sucks,
work
man.
to you? Okay,
School
fair
sucks
enough.
No matter what. But when it comes to actually down to the actual act of flying airplanes, is awesome. But in the same respect, right? Like, you don't want to fly an airplane, especially if you're flying solo. You don't want to fly an airplane on 4 hours of sleep. So you need to make it work somehow, and you need to figure it out. So there were a lot of times that, you know, I'd have to either call in and say, hey, listen, can we bump this back an hour because like I'm unfit to fly and I need another hour of sleep, or this or that, or whatever the case may be. And one of the reasons that I thought I might have to put things on hold, but like I said, if you're passionate enough about it, you'll do it. And if it's something that you really want, then you'll do it. So.
Those were also actual planes, not just simulators, right?
Yeah. So like perfect example, right? One of the days before practice, I actually didn't have class that day, but I flew. I had to do a long solo cross country flight, so I flew from middle of Georgia down to Panama City, Florida, and I stopped down there, got some lunch, had them fill up the plane, and then flew back. So we're not talking. A lot of times we just fly local and then practice maneuvers and stuff we need to do to actually get our licenses. But some of the times too, you're doing these a little bit longer haul trips through instrument, through the clouds and stuff like that it's very taxing mentally and physically on you to be, so vigilant and aware and make sure you're being safe. So.
And that's kind of where I was going, is that like it seems like at every point in your day-to-day life, week by week, you're like on all the time, whether it's taking care of the kid, preparing a family, preparing the team, flying, school. Where does this drive, where does this energy come from? Was this kind of instilled from you at a young age? Was this more military, like we don't have sleep, we've got things to do? Where did this kind of come from?
Yeah, I think it's in all reality, I think it's biological.
Okay.
My dad, he sells food for a living, and he doesn't stop. He's like, hey, well, I could sell more food. Like I'm gonna make more money. I get paid by that, so that's what I'm gonna do. And then my brother, he's a lawyer in New York City. I was just talking to him yesterday. He's doing a deal out there, this big law.
Okay.
And he just did a deal out there. He's working 120 hours in the week. So I'm like what? I don't know what you're talking about. He's literally living at the office because that's what he needs to do to be successful, and that's what he makes more money that way, right? And for me, it's the same way. Yesterday was our off day. So what did I do? I went upstairs and I rearranged all the shelf. I was up there in our walk-in closet and rearranging shelving and doing this and doing that. I get done and I go drive down and help my dad, do some stuff, handiwork down at his house. And I'm like, I want to come back and put the insulation in my garage and do this and do that. Like, to me, it's like, if I'm not doing something, like, I just feel lazy. Like, and that goes, it goes for everything, right? With the coaching or, being at home or trying to take 5 minutes. It's like, I always have to be doing something. I could always be better, right? So especially with the coaching stuff, it's like, if I'm not doing it, or if my team is not doing it, I feel like someone else is, and then so and in terms of setting an example for your players and your staff and stuff like that, it's like if they see how hard that I work, and how much drive and passion I have that I want to be successful, then why would they not do the same? And then it holds them accountable, saying, hey, if I can do this, you have no excuse to tell me that, you didn't go get your passport for a month, or you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Right. So, I think it's definitely one of the lead by example type things. And I think the actual sadistic nature of our minds is just, hey, we just have to keep driving and force ourselves to do stuff. And I don't know. I mean,
how does someone that despises laziness end up in video games, where half of the player base are notorious slackers, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. It actually, it's funny because when it comes down to it, it's the weirdest thing on the face of the earth. Because I was in the Marine Corps. I got out in 2014. In 2014, I really, really struggled with PTSD. I could not sleep at all. If I went to sleep, I woke up with night terrors, and there were times I literally thought I was seeing ghosts. Like, I was terrified, petrified every day to try to go to sleep. To the point that in our room, we had me and my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. We had a 1-bedroom apartment, and there was a wall for the walk-in closet that had a mirror on it, and I literally had to hang a bed sheet over the mirror because I was seeing shit in the mirror. So when I couldn't sleep, I had to find stuff to do with myself. And I started playing Hearthstone and Counter-Strike, and I was like, oh, hey, I'm not bad at Counter-Strike, I'll play this game. I started playing that, and then I guess it was about a year down the road, I'm like, I got into the beta for Overwatch, and I'm like, oh, let me test this out. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm not bad at this game. And I'm like, I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna try to make some money doing it. And then I realized once the game actually came out, I'm like, yeah, I'm not that good. So I want to be involved. How do I do that? And I started looking at coaching and seeing if I would be able to help people. And I knew, at least from a leadership and structure standpoint, I could. And I was around in the game for a little bit, so it was that too. so then I started coaching teams, and I think I talked to you about this before, Yiska, but the first team I coached, Arrow was one of my players. Tickety was one of my players. Like I had a bunch. I was surrounded by a bunch of good people who ended up being successful too, right? So, it really helped me out. And then I ended up just kind of going through the ranks with that and signed a contract with Hammers Esports. Freaking first contract, $100 a month. I was living in it. But what it did was it gave me an escape, because I was going to use that time. I don't know what I would use that time for if I didn't find it. So, at the end of the day, when you find something like that and you end up, you replace it and it replaces something, negative in your life with positive energy, it's great. And, I said to my dad yesterday, I was just down there helping him. I said, it's a crazy world. I said, when I started all this and everything, it was a really good escape for me, and I just thought it was going to be something temporary. 4 years down the road, or whatever it is, 5 years down the road, playing video games, doing that stuff, like, it's influenced my life so much that, like, now I don't deal with any of that stuff. I can sleep fine at night, all this other stuff. And, like, I'm actually thankful for the experiences and everything that happened to me when I was in the Marine Corps, because if it didn't, then nothing would have went this way, because I just would have went to school. I would graduate from university. I would have did whatever the hell I was going to do, and that would have been it. But I've been able to meet and influence so many more people now, just because of the sheer fact of, going to Afghanistan, like, really screwed me up in the head for a couple of years. I mean, like I said, I never thought I'd be thankful for it, but here I am today, and I am. So it's a wild ride, man. It's a wild ride. That's
life's a weird journey.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. Like, in comparison, I was always like, okay, so this guy theoretically could just fly planes, probably make more money, but
here we are,
other
people's children.
Like, yeah.
And the thing for me, like I said, when it comes to coaching, I love the fact that I get to be involved in the game, and I get to do this. I love sports so much that it kind of lets me do that, and they channel that side of me. But in the same respect, what I love more than actually coaching the game is making these players better people, and being able to give them an outlet for someone that can share these experiences with, and give them a different perspective on life, and help them learn through these things, like a lot of people don't have. And that's what we talk to the coaching staff, and the biggest thing I tell them is, hey, listen, like, we make better people, the players better people first, and then we make the players better players second. And like, that's what we need to do, because at the end of the day, I have a shelf life in esports, so does everybody else. That's the way it is. And whenever that time runs out, if they're not set up for success beyond esports with being good people, and positively influence their communities, or understanding hey, they could do these kind of jobs, or stream, or this or that, or whatever, then I'm not doing my job, because I'm not setting them up for success. Because like how shitty would it be if you work with a guy for 10 years and it's like, oh, hey, by the way, your career's over, and you have nothing. Like,
yeah.
You're like, what do they do? I would never want to do that. And that's why, like I said, it's always people come first, and then the actual player side of it comes second. So
amazing.
Real fast before we wrap up,
go ahead.
I feel like I have to
say last question.
Say my piece. Just from that kind of emotional place and that kind of heartfelt story, I just wanted to thank you for the service you gave.
Appreciate
it. Glad that you're feeling better, and glad that video games can be an outlet, because we constantly hear that drudged up violent video games, is that the other thing, and it's always heartwarming to hear stories like yours and many others to kind of put that to rest, hopefully sooner or later. So just glad that everything worked out.
Yeah, me too. Trust me, me too.
Yeah, I do have one last question for you as we sign off, and we do this when everybody comes on representing a team. You got a lot of LA Valiant fans out there. Like I said, we've been kind of lurking in your Discord this past week, especially trying to, kind of see what they're talking about and hope, kind of get the pulse of the team. And fans are steadfast, which is great. You're changing a lot this season. There's a lot going on. Season 3 is obviously going to be a big change from Season 2 and Season 1. What message do you have for those LA Valiant fans or prospective LA Valiant fans as we go in to Season 3?
Sure, yeah. I think the biggest thing is just to, just to take a deep breath and just trust us. We're doing our best job. Like we want to put together a roster that long term is going to be successful, and that that we believe in, and we get these personalities that build the personalities that the players love, like they did with Custa and Kariv and Agilities and everybody else. So just like I said, just everybody just needs to take a deep breath. It's I see all the stuff. Everybody's like, oh, Valiant's gonna finish 20th, this, that, everything else. Like, if you know the type of person that I am, that's not going to happen. I physically cannot let that happen, right? And it's so important that if they believe in the management, and they believe in the ownership, and they love the team, believe in the coaching staff, we're going to put the team in the right place to succeed. Just like any other team, we're going to go through some growing pains, just like a normal sport, just like an esport. When you have a new team, there's gonna be growing pains, but trust me, we will be fine. We'll be in a great place, and it's gonna be an exciting season. So
love it. Even D-Pay is in here rooting you on. Hashtag
oh
trust packing. There he is. Look at him.
I just
right
don't
there.
like the team he coaches for. I like him, but I don't like
He's like, I like you, D-Pay, but I will crush you. That's good. That's good to have. I think a great resounding message for LA Valiant fans. Everywhere. I need to buy every year I buy a coach's jersey. Last year's
is Packin making the cut?
I better make sure. Wait, where do you live? Because I'll find you.
Here's the thing.
He's got planes. He knows how to fly them. He'll find you.
Here's the thing: is the last 2 coaching jerseys I bought within like 5 months, they moved on to different teams. So maybe you don't want me buying your jersey at that point, but who knows?
No, I'm good here, dude. We're not moving. We're staying here. We're in for the long haul here.
His feet are planted.
We'll do a special segment early on in the Overwatch League season called John Buys a Coach Jersey. And we'll see which one I end up falling on.
Man.
But for real, Packing, this has been great. For real,
Yes,
thank you so much for being on the show with us, just being really transparent and honest. We really appreciate it. And I know that fans of the Overwatch League love the insight, the experience that you provide. And, thanks for using our platform to, be able to talk about it a little bit more. So with that going on, let's go ahead and close out. Joe, I think we got some patrons this week.
Yes, we do. And as a kind of a new goal, we're pretty close, but we'll at $250 apparently we'll be doing releases of the pre-show and the post-show if we ended up doing those. They'll be out for everybody on the Patreon. So definitely, if you're interested in that kind of content, jump on over. Throw some love. We appreciate it. And big love, much love, all that good stuff to Carl B, Jensen MW, and Charlie L. Thank you so much for supporting the show and making everything like this possible.
Yeah, for real. We really do appreciate it. And just for an idea, I'm actually going to release the pre-show and post-show on its own this week. And so essentially what we're thinking about doing is I'm going to release the pre and post-show on, I think, Thursday. But it's going to go up on Patreon either today or tomorrow. So patrons will actually get the episode or the pre and post show before anybody else, which is kind of cool. But we promise not to leak anything in the pre and the post show. We're not gonna do you dirty like that.
No,
I don't think. Maybe we will. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so a little bit of extra content, probably an extra 20, 30 minutes each week of our conversations. Not always Overwatch League and competitive Overwatch related. Sometimes like what Yiska had for lunch related, but A lot of people ask
Sure.
for like, I would love to.
Everything.
A lot of people come and watch our VODs because they like our pre and post show. So, let's make that available for you guys on more platforms. I think the extra time it'll take is worth it. So, all right. Beside that, cool. Let's just kind of do shout outs for the week, where people could find you. Packing, you're our guest. Go first. Like, last thing, put it all out there, whatever. Socials, hoorahs, whatever that is. Hoorah's Army, right?
That's hoorah as a Marine Corps.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm ignorant.
Oh, that's all right. Packing_10 on Twitter. I also I've been doing a lot of streaming lately too. So same thing on Twitch. Packing_10 on Twitch as well. And appreciate you guys having me. Super excited for the season. Shout out to all the Valiant, everybody who stayed with us last year through the process, and who's either a new or existing fan staying through this process too. It's an exciting time, and I'm super excited. And I think once you get to know the players and get to see what we're gonna do, it'll be the same for everybody else. So
awesome.
Will you be at any of the homestands?
Yeah. So this year I'll be basically I'm like working like half remote and then half with the team. So I'll be working typically through the week at my house, and then I'll be traveling with the team and stuff like that. So I'll be out. If anybody's out in China, you could see me out there or at any of the home stands. Make sure you come up and say hi. I'll be at all the matches this year. I'll be traveling everywhere. So make sure you stop by and say hi. And yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yiska, what about you, man? So first of all, whoever did the Photoshop on your thumbnail on your article this week about boomers in Overwatch League, who did that?
Face app.
Oh, really? You just face app it?
I just straight up face
Dude,
app
it was great. It was so good.
Yeah.
I know you had an amazing article this week about kind of, I would just say like generally just kind of like age maturity in Overwatch and how it kind of scales. And it was awesome. But, shout outs. What should people check out this week?
As always, like now that I'm off on the day job, I'm going to pump out some content for GG Intel. I want to go on a bit of a spree where we will see, because I got to clear up some administrative stuff. Other than that, go check out the Twitter as always. I put a couple of pieces there. Like I had a satirical piece, I had a couple of opinion pieces, of course the bench interview and whatnot. So yeah, all the good things on GG Intel.
Great. What about you, Joe? What's coming up this week, man?
Today, about 4 hours ago, just posted a feature about Nevix and how he's basically the Iron Man of Overwatch, just out here surviving and thriving, and maybe what his future might be on the Defiant. Shout out to Skipjack for answering my email. That was really cool to get his comment on a former teammate. So that was really dope. This week also have this week's episode of Alternate Overwatch History. We're going to be talking about Runaway. Won't give too much more than that, but be on the lookout for that in the next couple days. So yeah, that's kind of what's on the horizon.
Awesome. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. That's kind of where the shows end up going anyway. Follow the show on Twitter at tactical_crouch, youtube.com/KickedTripod, and of course, twitch.tv/KickedTripod. Support the show, patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. I think we're going to try and do a game night this next week. I wanted to hammer down a time with you, and I totally forgot. But if you're Croucher sub or Croucher patron, we'll talk about it in our Discord. We'll go ahead and send out the updates. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Big thank you again to Battlecrab, Made, Pin, Lulshin, and Charlie L for being our patron producers for episode 66 of Tactical Crouch. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye. Bye.